Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about debugging. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, would you say that your debugging skills as a software engineer help you with troubleshooting other things in your life? Yes, I would. But I wouldn't necessarily credit it to just the debugging. I would go one further and I would say that the skills that I have acquired as a software engineer, and I suspect it's very similar to like electrical engineers or mechanical engineers, any type of engineer basically, has helped me quite a bit. So let me let me just give you a little bit of a slice of some stuff that I've been doing in recent time that might help sort of make it more concrete what it is that I feel has been improved in my life by learning debugging or being a software engineer. So uh, it's not that long ago that I took on a new role for a software company, and basically the role that I had was principal engineer at this point. And the idea that the employers had for me was basically to take more holistic, because they had the same problems that you can imagine most companies have. You have siloed teams; they don't really collaborate. Costs are running wild. Like people are not really they're not really controlling their spending, or like they don't really know how to do things in the cloud world. They need to raise quality because, of course, they have a lot of bugs, like everybody else, etc., etc. And so the job that they gave me was basically as fluffy, and I swear, as fluffy as, can you fix all the things? That's basically it. They wanted me to, like, they didn't really give me any specific project. They literally just put me into the organization and said, here is like here's your basic onboarding. Oh, you have some documents here and there, and then it's up to you to figure out how to be useful. This is a very common thing that can happen when I've said, as I've said to you before, guys. Like this is the now you're at the level where you don't necessarily just have a ticket where someone says, "Oh, go and make that thing." They literally say, "Fix things, make yourself useful," in essence, and then it's on you to prove that you can be useful, because otherwise, of course, they're going to have bias remorse and all these things that I've told you about before. And so now I'm faced with a choice. All right, so either I sit and do absolutely nothing, and most likely that's because I'm going to be accountable to someone, which means that if I have not achieved anything or done anything, I have a bit of a problem. Sort of proving that I have value within the organization. And the other thing I have to have is, okay, now I need to basically figure out, how do I make all these things happen? Like, how do I make some type of impact on my employer so that they realize that, yeah, you got a good person for this specific position? And that is not completely, I hope, at the very least, like I hope you can see the correlation to what it's like to start on a new software project. Well, usually you don't really have an onboarding process whatsoever. There's no documentation, which of course there's not for this sort of thing either, in many cases, and it's of course all outdated. And in the software example, you're left with figuring out how the entire system works. And now I'm going to do exactly the same thing. But this time, at my specific level, it's not just one project. I think it was 18, something like that, in this specific scenario. So I have 18 projects that I have to basically be responsible for, with about 150-ish software developers who all have, they have different backgrounds, they're different skill levels. I haven't met all of them, but now I'm supposed to help 150 people rather than a standard team of 5 people, or be part of that sort of structure, right? And so what do I do? Well, I have learned through the years that if I have a basic playbook that I run for practically every single, and I've mentioned that the other videos, I have basically the same setup for any team I have. And so my first thought is, all right, I'm gonna have to do the inventory. As I've mentioned to you before, guys, the inventory is just me saying that, all right, before I do a single thing, before I recommend tools, before I start complaining about things that aren't working, etc., etc., or say anything whatsoever that isn't just super positive and supportive of my work environment, I'm going to take a look at all the things that I know is going to matter to me when I work as a software developer, and usually that is make sure that you know where all the repos are, make sure where all of the, where's the infrastructure configurations, the logs, like all the third-party systems, etc., etc. So you get a holistic picture of all the areas that you need to know about to deliver software within a project. Now, what do you imagine I did in the role in the case where I have 18 projects? Well, of course I do exactly the same thing. So here I literally just sit down. I create myself a my own little repo, because I usually work with everything. You will see that if you work with me, everything is as code. Nothing is like everything is in a version control system of some sort, and in a format that can be easily reviewed if at all possible. So I create my repo, create a basic markdown file with a table, and then I start mapping out, just columns with all the different teams, and then I put all the rows with, what frameworks are they using, what libraries are they using, all the things that I know that I would have looked for in any, like if it's a project file or a package.json file or whatever, like a POM file, it doesn't really matter. Like I would do the same thing. What are the dependencies? And I do exactly the same thing for 18 teams. And by the end of having done that, I now know basically how all the teams are working. And I know what they're running. I know practically everything there is to know about the technical aspects of the team. I don't know the social aspects, which becomes the next thing, of course. All right, so now I need to know their rituals. I need to talk to some people, get some accesses to different Teams channels or Slack channels, depending on what they're using and stuff like that, so that I can talk to them and get a little bit of a feel for who am I dealing with. The social aspects are very important. And again, it is exactly the same thing I would have done as an engineer. And the thing that I hope that you sort of see here, what I'm doing is literally the same thing you do when you work as a software developer or when I work on a story. So I need to understand this system. There is no difference, conceptually at the very least, between a single team with a software stack and so forth and 18 teams. It's the same thing. It's just at a larger scale, and it takes longer to go through it. And then there are complexities when you're talking. It's in essence, it's I'm not saying microservices, but you just have more things, and each of these nodes have different behaviors. Now I'm lucky in this case because they're not depending on each other really. They're just working in isolation and so forth. But the process is virtually the same, and so when I had this and when I did this after I was done, I had a lot of positive feedback, and it turns out that quite a lot of software developers within the organization were astonished at the fact that nobody had done that before. And this is what I tell you guys, and it is the biggest tip I can give you, especially when you're at this level. If you become some person who is supposed to deal with, entire organizational problems, where it's, as I like to call them, systematic problems, it's not just code related necessarily, it's the whole thing. Don't forget how you solve your problems with your software or within your own team, because those, I promise you guys, there is very little difference between leading a single team, fixing the code in a single team, and fixing it at an entire organizational level. The main difference between them is your soft skills and how well you know office politics and how effective you are at communication and stuff like that. Of course, it takes longer, but the code inventory, setting up some basic guidelines, and then agreeing on some basic standards, and then trying to understand if someone has an issue with figuring out how to do a certain thing, those are all the same. Even at my level, where, as I said, I don't have 5 people, I have 150 people. So what I want you to take away from this is that, yes, of course, troubleshooting has helped me in my daily life. And the thing that I would like to summarize, to try to nail it down in a one sentence type of thing, is that whenever you have any type of problem, you can always apply an engineering mindset to how to solve that problem. It's not just for the software itself, or like if you're building something or so forth and so forth. It's about understanding all the components that are present within the system, be it an electrical engineering system, or if it's a software system, or a human system, basically a company, and figure out where all the components are and understand each component and how they interact, and then using your engineering background or your troubleshooting, call it whatever, your mind, to figure out how do all these things work together and how can I make them work as well as possible. Have a great day.